Hi everyone. I wanted to give you an update because, my life is just that interesting. This last couple of weeks, I decided to make the courageous decision to start medication for my anxiety. As you know, if you've been watching up to now, it has been completely out of control, very, very chronic, very debilitating, very interruptive of my everyday life. And although I was trying a lot of things to handle it on my own with coping mechanisms, I already go to therapy, and other tools that I have in my toolbox, it just seemed to not be really working or not effective enough for me at that time. And although I was super nervous and scared of going back on medication because it has been 8 years since I've been on any medication for my anxiety, I was nervous that, one, it wouldn't work and that I would have to try a different one. Two, that I would have side effects and the side effects would last, weeks. I wouldn't see any actual improvement in weeks. And when I tell you debilitating, I mean my body was fighting a lot. The nerves were surging up and down my entire body. And having that happen and continue to happen, like anybody with chronic pain or nerve pain, you want a solution today, not tomorrow. You don't want to continue to feel the pain, and with antidepressants, it takes time. It takes patience for you to start to see improvement in your mood, to see improvement in your symptoms. And although people are, millions of people are on it or on them, it's a lot in the sense of the time it takes to see something, the time it takes to feel something, the time it takes to, put in. And for me, being the impatient person that I am when it comes to my mental and physical health, I didn't want to take that time. I had no true intention of wanting to take that time, mostly because of being in pain. Just like nobody really wants to be in pain. I don't think anybody's out here saying, woo-woo, being super excited about being in any sort of pain. So for me, I wanted to do it obviously because I was in a very, very dark, bad place that it was hard for me to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I was struggling. And with that, I decided to do it, but I was afraid to do it. I was afraid to wait. I was afraid of losing everything, essentially. I was afraid that it wouldn't work, and that if it didn't work, that I was going to be out of work, and I was afraid that I would lose my job, or I was afraid that I would have to be stuck at home. All of these fears were coming to the surface, which are, deep-rooted fears that I actually still have to work on. Even if I can go out of my house, even if I can go to work now, even if my anxiety has lessened and is more even keel and at bay, it doesn't mean that I don't have to work on my root issues, my root fears. And that's something that you don't see often. I mean, I remember in the beginning when I was like 18 or 19 and I started getting these panic attacks, that my doctor at the time recommended just going to therapy. He actually didn't want to prescribe an antidepressant because I think he thought I was either too young, or that maybe if I just went to therapy it would help and I wouldn't have to go on an antidepressant. I'm not sure what his reasoning was behind it, but he wasn't someone that was trying to push medication on me, and I appreciate that. But at the time I was very, very lost and I needed it, and he prescribed it anyway, and it helped me get me back on my feet. And the problem though was, even though I was trying therapy, I wasn't being disciplined enough in it. I mean, essentially the therapists that I had tried to go to weren't as effective in my healing journey as my therapist that I have now is, I would say. I wasn't getting homework, for one. I wasn't really being held accountable or being, challenged in growing as I am now. Now, for the last year and a half since I've started therapy, I've been very much challenged by my therapist. I've been very much held accountable to do my practices, to do my coping mechanisms, to try and face my fears. I've been pushed by her, and I appreciate it because it's like I see it sometimes as like a teacher in school. I mean, trauma there, always having to get an A and not failing. So when I don't do my homework, quote unquote, I feel like I'm failing, and the thought of going to her in the next session and telling her that I didn't do my homework is actually more traumatizing than just the session itself. But I appreciate it because even though I have those feelings towards homework and that challenge, I appreciate having that feeling because it makes me push myself. It makes me put more effort into the work, into challenging my thoughts and patterns and habits, and being more disciplined on my coping mechanisms and medication and what I want to do and what I like and who I am and how my relationships are and all of those things. Your day-to-day life, your life, and everything that it consists of, and how you want to be better. So in the beginning, I didn't have that. I didn't find a therapist that actually challenged me in that way. It was more like I found friends that I was, having conversations with, but there was no challenge. So now I'm being challenged, and a lot of things are coming up to the surface, and a lot of work is being done mentally. And even though the medication is helping as far as symptoms, that doesn't mean that you stop doing the work. So I'm not going to stop doing the work. I still have to put in that work. And that's not something that you see. Sometimes you often see people just get medication, and because their symptoms have subsided or are handled, they feel as if that's all they need, that there's nothing to work on, essentially. Or maybe they do work on it, but they work on it with themselves, which isn't bad. It's not bad to work on things on your own. I personally think it helps to have that third party, because there are things in my life that I see a certain way that somebody else may interpret a different way, and it may bring light to why I have a certain pattern, or why I have a certain thought process, or why I have a certain habit that I do. It brings it to light. As far as I can go, I can't see it that way. So if I can't see it that way, but I can talk to somebody and they can see it a different way, or they interpret it a different way, and then they explain that interpretation, then things kind of shift for yourself. Because some things you don't like you hear, you don't know what you don't know. So if you're doing your work on your own, which is, again, is completely fine. I'm not judging anybody that doesn't go to therapy. I'm not saying everybody needs therapy. Therapy isn't, cheap for some of us. We don't get that in our healthcare plans, us Americans. But if you don't go to therapy and you're doing it on your own, which again is completely fine, there are some things that you may not see though. And that's one thing that I like. I like seeing someone else's perspective in a good way, because there's other people out there that you tell your story to, that you vent to, and, all of a sudden you're getting unsolicited advice that you didn't ask for, and they're critiquing you in a way that comes off more judgmental than it does helpful. That also happens, aka talking to certain family members, talking to certain friends or coworkers, or even, your significant other. That may happen where you vent to them or you talk to them, and it comes off, depending on the relationship you have with that person, as a critique instead of a different perspective. Whereas a therapist is usually a stranger, so most of us don't have that, defense when we talk to a stranger or a therapist, because we don't care if they judge us. But when we talk to certain family members or our partner or coworkers or friends, and they say something a certain way, we get defensive because, it may be how we relate to them, or it may feel as if it's being, if it's judgment from them, and we don't want to be judged by them. But a therapist, it's almost as if it's a stranger. I don't care if I'm judged by them. So we're more open. We're more vulnerable. We're more open to how they perceive our situation, instead of, a family member that we may not be that open to. And we may be leaving out bits and pieces of the story that are important because we don't want them to know certain things, or to see certain things, or to see us a certain way. And that therapy on top of medication, or medication by itself, and you do the work on your own. Basically, my point in this whole nonsense video that I'm making here is that any amount of help is good. We often are very prideful people, or there's a lot of people that are prideful, and you don't want to ask for help, or you feel guilty for asking for help, or whatever the case may be. But any amount of help is good, because we as humans should be more communal than we are, and less separate and alone. And if you just choose to do medication because you're afraid of asking for help from a therapist or family members, or even for yourself, you don't see yourself being able to do more, or to be better, or maybe you don't even see anything wrong with yourself, which that's also okay. You don't see that you need any improvement in life. You feel good, you feel happy, you have the things that you want, you're doing the thing that you enjoy, and you don't think that there needs to be any improvement. And kudos to you for that, and I have, again, no judgment towards that. But if you just choose to do medication and you're good, don't choose to do medication, but you choose the therapy, and you're working on coping skills and, you know, challenging yourself, challenging your thoughts, challenging your patterns and your habits and your relationships, and working on those things, or if you're doing both, anything to get to a place of peace is acceptable in my eyes, obviously. Peace for you, though, because everybody has a different perspective of what peace is for themselves. And often we grow up thinking or creating a story of what peace should look like for ourselves, even if it generally isn't what we truthfully feel peace should be for us, or is for us. So whatever creates that peace for you, go for it. If you need help, you should always be able to ask for it, even if you can't find it in family or friends or coworkers. You have a hard brick wall in front of you, and you just go to a doctor. Like I said, strangers for some reason can end up being your greatest outlet, can end up being your greatest help and motivation, and get you to where you need to be, greatest inspiration. So going to a stranger, going to a doctor, going to just a therapist, doing what you need to do to find your peace is good. And just, being, generally just being kind to yourself and others. And that's literally all we need in this world. It's just general kindness. But that's what's going on with me. Update is decided to take the medication. Right now I don't have any side effects, besides maybe being thirsty like 24/7, which is fine. I need to drink more water anyway, so I guess that's a good thing. But I don't have any side effects. My anxiety has even healed, and although there is this feeling like, not even like a numb feeling, because that's also, I feel like, a misconception of antidepressants, is that you feel numb, you don't have your regular emotions, you can't really feel joyful as joyful as you used to feel, and you may not feel as low, but there's still like this range of emotions that you don't generally feel. And I don't think that's entirely true. Like, I understand that perspective and I understand that feeling within, but I wouldn't say that's entirely true. There is sort of this just general peace and calmness, and your thoughts aren't as effective to your body, at least for me in my case, as they were. Like, I would have just like a minuscule of a negative thought, and then my whole body would transition into anxiety and panic. Whereas I can have those thoughts and my whole body isn't transitioning into panic. It's more of like, okay, I see that thought for what it is, and we're gonna work on, observing those thoughts and hopefully eliminating them or changing them, or just constantly observing them to the point that they exhaust themselves and just leave. It's a process. Life is a process, and we're here for it. We're doing it. We're moving on. We're living. One other thing that I wanted to continue to do is this. I wanted to continue to communicate with you guys, and whether you've watched all of the videos or none of the videos, or there's this video, then that's cool. If you've made it to this timestamp and watched all 19 minutes of this video, like, cool, I appreciate it. I love sharing my life with you guys. I'm not afraid to do so, and I feel like I get to inspire or help or just vent. And maybe you guys relate, maybe you don't, but I enjoy doing it, and I want to keep doing it because it makes me feel good. So I will see you guys on the flip side, maybe tomorrow, maybe not, I don't know. But thanks for joining my journey. Bye, guys.